Hello and welcome to coverage of Game 2 from the World Chess Championship 2018. In this game, the world champion Magnus Carlsen has the white pieces and the challenger Fabiano Caruana from the United States has the black pieces. In Game 1, proceedings ended in a draw, but not without drama. Carlsen had many chances, should have won. So let's see how this will affect them in the second game. Now, Carlsen had the white pieces, and so far this year he has been playing e4 against Caruana. They had several games. He tested him in the Petrov. He played e4 and bishop to c4. So the Petrov is this opening right here, e4, Nf3, Nf6. This is what has been the main weapon of Caruana, and Carlsen also tested him with bishop c4, the bishop's opening. But again, he surprised a lot of people by playing d4. Perhaps inspired by Woody Harrelson, who made the ceremonial first move for Caruana yesterday. Was supposed to play e4, but ended up playing d4. I guess he misheard him. And it was a curious incident when he tripped over Caruana's king. It seemed like it was not by accident, but that's a different story. So d4 by Carlsen, a little bit, a small surprise because he has been playing e4. But I do suspect that Carlsen is playing a little bit of a mind game here. And he's going to play d4, see what Caruana is playing there, if he wants to divulge any preparation, and go from there. And then he will probably go back to e4. That's my feeling. But let's see. d4, knight f6 by Caruana. Knight to f3, not revealing. Well, asking black to reveal what he's going to play the pawn to e6, g6, or play the pawn to d5. These are the main options, and Caruana went with d5. So after that, we transpose to the Queen's Gambit Declined with e6. If black had taken on c4, that's the Queen's Gambit accepted. Caruana has been playing that as well, but goes for the Queen's Gambit Declined in this one. So knight c3 and bishop e7. And well, the Queen's Gambit Declined, which we have on the board now, is one of the most common openings in World Championship matches. I would say the Queen's Gambit and the Ruy Lopez make up the majority of World Championship games. Bishop g5 is the most common move, but Carlsen went with bishop to f4. Again, we're following the most common moves here, castles, e3, and now c5 by Caruana. Curiously, Carlsen had been on the black side of this position against Anand in the 2014 World Championship match in Sochi. Famous game that Carlsen actually lost. He played knight b to d7. And after that, Anand played c5. It's a different story. Famous game that Anand won. But, well, of course, Carlsen won that match in the end. But that's a different story there. c5 by Caruana today. And again, the most common moves, d takes c5, bishop takes c5. And both players were playing quite fast at this point. And queen c2 here by Carlsen. Queen c2 and a3 are the most common moves here. Queen c2 played by Carlsen. Now knight c6, a3. We don't want any funny business on b4. And white is also in some lines preparing to push his pawn to b4, hitting the bishop. And now black plays queen to a5. Recently, rook d1 has become the main move. This is what Carlsen played. People have also played long castles here, which is probably more double-edged. And there's even a funky move here, but not very popular, but I like the idea. Rook a2. Not that I'm recommending it, just a funny line. Rook a2. The idea is to play b4 and simply have the rook protected now, because the rook on a1 was unprotected. So now I can play, in some cases, b4. Okay, rook d1 was played in the game today. And now the most common move is bishop e7. But here, rook d8, quickly played by Caruana. And at this point it was clear that Caruana had preparation in this line. He was well prepared to play this line. And here Carlsen took 17 minutes. Now they get 100 minutes for 40 moves, so taking 17 minutes this early in the opening indicates that Carlsen feared that Caruana had good preparation here, and he thought for 17 minutes. Carlsen has played Rook D1 before, but never faced Rook D8, which is a rare move. A rather recent move, but he has never faced it. So Bishop E2. The most common move for white, he played Bishop E2, but the most common move is Knight to D2. And I guess the reason Carlsen thought for a while here was that he didn't want to go into sharp lines like D4, where he would have to face the preparation of Caruana. So Bishop E2 by Carlsen. We should mention that, okay, once we played Rook D1, we did unpin the pawn on if you were to play B3. So let's see that actually, because many people might be wondering why not play B4 and attack two pieces here. Well, black would simply take on B4 with the knight. Pawn takes, bishop takes, two attackers on the knight, and once you protect it, the other knight jumps in, and white is in trouble. You could play bishop E5, but I would simply attack this bishop, and eventually you run out of defenders of the knight. So this is out of the question, so bishop to E2. And here, despite Carlsen taking 70 minutes, Caruana was well prepared and he played knight to E4. Again, rather quickly. And this is, I believe, a novelty, according to my database. And shows that, yeah, Caruana is ready. The first round jitters, they're gone. He's ready to play. And he's displaying his preparation. Now 12 minutes for Carlsen here to castle. And it's clear that Caruana has the upper hand in this one. I mean, the position is equal, but he has a psychological pressure. Playing fast, he's in his preparation, he's feeling good. Now he takes on C3 and B takes C3. If Carlsen had managed to convert yesterday, then it's hard to say what would have happened in this one. The psychological situation would have been much more different. But okay, Caruana to play here, and he played H6. Some people might be wondering, why not just take the pawn here? Free pawn right? Not so much. If you take with the queen, I play rook to A1, and turns out the queen doesn't have any moves. I attack you on the A file, and I cover every square here, so the queen is actually trapped. If you take with the bishop, this pin is very, very annoying. I'm threatening queen B3 and winning the bishop next move. So let's say you play d takes E4. Now I can play a move like knight to G5. Another threat appears here on H7. You block that, but now I play E4. And once the bishop drops back, because of the pin on the bishop, it's going to drop off. So Caruana avoids all of that and protects the G5 square, which, as we saw, can be a juicy outpost for a white piece. A4 by Carlsen. And now knight to E7. Here, Carlsen played knight into E5, getting an after knight. But it's clear at this point that it's going to be really hard for white to play for a win here. He has double pawns here on the C file. And once he gets rid of the pawn, which actually happened after Caruana's bishop D6, C takes D5, we see that white has slightly damaged structure on the queen side, while black has a very solid pawn structure and compact one. So here Carlsen sensed that he should steer the position to a more static and quiet one. He played bishop to F3. He could have played knight to takes F7, but I guess he didn't want to go for complications here. Probably this should be around equal, but black has a choice here. He can play knight to F4, allow white to take here on D6, and then pick up the bishop here. Or he can play something like bishop to D7 and play that position. In either case, black is more than okay. So Carlsen went for bishop F3, allowing black to take on F4. Again, you cannot take this pawn on C3 because I will take. And now I have several good options. One of them is simply to take on f7. And once king takes, I will have the bishop pair. And all of a sudden a good pawn structure, while black has 3 pawn islands. I have only 2. So pawn islands is simply counting how many the pawns together in a chain. So this is 1 pawn island, this is 2, this is 3. And for white it's 1 and 2. So in general, when you have fewer pawn islands, you have a better pawn structure. So also knight takes c3, I can play knight c4, and I'm hating everything. I'm hitting this knight, hitting the queen, and hitting this with all I've got. So this will lose material for black. So after bishop f3, Caruana took on f4, pawn takes, and now bishop takes e5. So forced simplification here. Carlsen plays an in-between move, takes on d8 check, and only then takes the piece. But once again, white's problem is he has isolated pawns all over the place. Okay, the e5 pawn isn't isolated because you can protect it at some point with f4, but once you do that, you also weaken your king, the diagonal to the king. So black, if he manages to finish development, he will have a better position. The only problem for black in the position is that he hasn't developed his pieces here. So Carlsen senses that he must try to stop him from developing. He plays rook b1. This attacks the pawn of b7 and means that this guy can't go here. I mean, if you can play bishop d7 and bishop here, then black is just better and white will have to suffer. So rook b8, trying to get the bishop out. After queen d3, black manages to get the bishop out. a5 was played by Carlsen here. Of course, you can't take it because then the bishop will hang. So bishop to c6, and now queen d6. So Carlsen goes for an ending. It is, however, clear that this ending is worse for him. The other option was to take on c6, but if you do that, and if you trade or not, in either case, it's only black that can win here with all these pawn weaknesses that he can attack. And white also has a weak back rank, meaning that if we land a check, say here, then in some cases it's even checkmate. So not a good situation for white. So Carlsen goes for queen d6, trying to get to an endgame, a tough one. Let's see what happened. They trade queens, and now he takes on f3. So now it's white who has a damaged pawn structure, but as we'll see later, it's not that significant. So at the moment it looks like white has a dangerous pass pawn, but after king f8, black is really quick to bring the king to control the pawn. And the king is actually often a very good blockader of passed pawns, and here he's just in time, and white has to be careful. He plays c4, he manages to back up the pawn in time, king to e8, a6 now. He could have played c5 also, but it would transpose. So if he plays c5 here, king d7, and white's only tries a6 and then b6, and this is actually what happened in the game. So let's go back, king e8. So instead of c5 in the game, a6 was played. b6 by Caruana, now c5. Of course, utilizing the pin. Black can't allow white to get the pawn here to c6, so king to d7. Carlsen took on b6 and played a7. So this is heading towards simplification. Rook a8, we have a trade. And white is going to lose this pawn eventually. He played king g2, e5. The plan is simple, to play king here, rook here, and win the pawn. Rook h4. Carlsen's idea is to, well, play down a pawn, but if you take the pawn, I will play f4 and I will simplify. I will trade off one pair of pawns, but Caruana doesn't want to allow that just yet. Plays f5 and now rook to b6. In the first game we also had a rook ending where one side was up a pawn, Carlsen was up a pawn. In this one, after this move, king e6, okay, this is coming, winning the pawn, so Carlsen decided just to give it up himself. d7 check, king takes. So now we have the situation of Caruana being up a pawn in a rook endgame. Now the problem with rook endgames is that they tend to be draws, and there's a famous saying by a chess master from around the turn of the 19th century called Taras, Siegbert Taras. He said all rook endgames are drawn. So this is kind of a famous saying in chess, that all rook endgames are drawn. it's not completely true, but it's a generalization that often applies, and in this game and in game 1 it applied. So Carlsen played rook b5, simply attacking the pawn, king e6, rook check, and the king goes back. The thing is, even though these pawns are doubled, in such a situation they're actually quite good, because look at these 3 pawns here. You can't really advance them without being caught by one of the f pawns. So at some stage you will have to trade down, and once you trade down and white having a good king here ready to face the pawns, you're not going to be able to get a winning position. So actually the game didn't last too long here. Another repetition, rook b5, king to f4, rook b4, e4 by Caruana. This undoubles white's pawn, but as we mentioned, it's impossible to advance the pawns without meeting the f pawns, so white gets rid of the weakness. And yeah, Caruana didn't try much. After rook b4, rook to g5, rook b7, rook g6, we actually had a draw agreed. So unlike Carlsen, who played on for probably 30 moves too much yesterday, extra 30 moves that shouldn't have been played, Caruana preferred to just call it a day and not spend energy on trying to win something that's unwinnable. So that shows a little bit the different strategies. Carlsen wants to try to tire his opponent, while Caruana is fine with just, you know, calling it a day. But okay, 2 games in the books, and 1-1 is the score. This one was rather quiet, to be honest, but I would say another psychological win for Caruana. He displayed his preparation, he was ready, he held quite easily with black, and he even had a slight chance to turn things around, but Carlsen was too experienced in this one. He sensed when to go for the endgame, and he held the endgame quite easily. But yeah, game 3 is on Monday. Sunday is a rest day, so I expect that I will see you all on Monday, and I will leave you with this puzzle here. This is from the 1978 World Championship match, a famous position. Anatoly Karpov with black against Viktor Korchnoi with white. It's black to play and win. And actually Korchnoi resigned the game after black's next move. What did black play here? Take your time and find it, and if you can, leave a comment and tell me what black should play here. See you in the next one. Bye bye.